All right, we're back. We've been talking about substring. We learned about this version of substring that takes in two integers. This first index is inclusive, the second one is exclusive, and it's used to get a subsection of the string. Char@, will give you a single character. Substring can give you several characters in the form of a string. So, an example of this, right? If I have hello world as my greeting, and I take that greeting, that string, and I get a substring from 0 to 5, we're effectively getting this section of the string. That's what's getting returned and stored in Word in this example. Right? 7 to 12 is going to give me this section. 5 to 6 will give you a single character, but there's a note here that it's technically a string, hence the double quotes. Be careful with that. Okay, there's also another hint here, big tip. This one, I don't think students use this as much as they should. I mentally use this all the time. If you take the difference of the parameters, that'll tell you how long the resulting string is going to be. For instance, 713, this has a absolute difference of 6. Whatever the string is, it's going to have a length of 6, right? Another way that, how can you use that? I can start at 7 and just count 6 characters, and that's what's going to be in the string. Okay? So a note here that 13 in theory is out of bounds, but because these indices are inclusive, exclusive, we're not actually accessing 13. That's what this note is talking about. Okay, so that was a couple of videos ago, and then we learned about this alternate version of substring. It turns out substring is overloaded. Overloaded methods occur when we have methods with the same name, such as both of these being called substring, in the same class. They are both in the string class, but the parameters are different. Right? This one only takes in one integer. It does functionally the same thing, but we're going to start at the specified index, and this example is a 7, and we're going to go through the rest of the string. Okay, we're going to start at index 4 and go through the rest of the string, and that is the resulting substring. We're still getting a subsection of the string, although technically this is the whole thing whenever we start at index 0 and go through the rest of the string. But we can use that to get a subsection of the string. This just, these are overloaded. And this one just exists to kind of make your life easier. Anyway, we're going to pick up there doing a little bit more coding back. I don't know if we're going to use both versions of the substring, but you need to have both of them in mind as you progress. Given a string, return a rotated left to version, where the first two chars are moved to the end. The string length will be at least 2. Here's an example. We see hello, and our output is taking these first two letters and putting them at the end. Something to note is that we never are going to edit a string. All we can do is make new strings and kind of simulate editing them. Okay, what do I mean? Well, we have str coming in. Ultimately, we need to return a string. So I'm going to basically make a new string. I'm going to call it RTN because I plan on returning this string. And what it is going to be is the first two characters. Why don't we get the first two as a separate string? So I'm going to say string first two. Because we're getting two characters, you could just use char@ twice, or you could use substring. We're going to go into str, get a substring starting at this index. This index is 0. And I'm not even going to count on other indices. I'm going to use my mathematical idea. I want the first two characters, 0 to 2. I know I'm starting at index 0. I want two characters, so I know the second parameter is 2. So this will give me the first two characters as a string. I'm going to save that into first two. Okay, how can I use this? Well, RTN, which is what I plan on returning, I need it to be everything else plus these first two. Why don't we get, I don't know, the back half? Half is a bit, how about back end, tail end, something like that. I need the rest of the characters. Everything starting at this index, going through the rest of the string. Okay, note that I'm saying the rest of the string. We just looked at some visuals. I'm going to use the overloaded version of substring. This is index 0. This is index 1. This is index 2. I want to take a substring of str, starting at index 2, going through the rest of the string. Just like that. If I did not know the overloaded version, I would be using str.length as a second parameter here, and it's just messy. That's all. Okay, so I'm going to get my first two characters. I'm going to get my tail end. RTN is ultimately the tail end going first, plus the first two after that, right? This would be the tail end in this example. This would be the first two in this example. Let's return RTN. Okay, hopefully you notice a trend here. If I'm creating variables, maybe the variables are nice. They maybe help you like have an understanding of what's going on, but you can tell they're not necessary. We could do every bit of this just at the point of return. I can take what is the tail end. I can tack on the first two characters. I can get rid of everything else. We're just doing it all at the point of return. I'm going to hit my go button. And there we have it. I'd like you to note that we're not editing str. str is still the same. It never changes. What I'm doing is that at the point of return, I'm creating a brand new string by taking this half or this section, taking the first two characters and adding those together. This puts a new string. This creates a new string, which gets returned. Let's go to the next one. This one's called write to. Given a string, return a rotated write to version where the last two chars are moved to the start. The string length will be at least 2. So we see hello coming in, and we're taking the last two characters and moving them up front. How is this different from left 2? Why is this even a challenge? Well, by starting at the beginning, we know that the first index is 0. Starting at the end, I'm going to have to use length in order to reference the last two characters dynamically. Okay, so string last 2 is going to be a substring of str. In the example of hello, I'm starting at this index and going through the rest of the string. That is index 0, 1, 2, 3. Right? It's index 3 on, right? So if I knew that our string was going to have a length of 5 every single time, I would start at index 3. In the case of Java, we're starting here at this index. That is going to be 0, 1, 2. Okay, so you see I can't just use 3 every single time because this is starting at index 2. So we need to do it in terms of the length. I'm going to take a substring of str, but where I'm starting is going to be at the end of the string, but back 2. What do I mean? The length of the string is 5, right? That index would be effectively here. If I subtract 2 off, we're going to go boop, boop. We're right here. So we're going to do a substring starting at that index. 5 minus 2, index 3. We're going to do a substring starting at index 3 with this example. With this example, my length is 4, so 4 minus 2, we're going to do one at index 2. That's right here. So these are the last two characters. I now need everything up to that point. So something like front end. That's going to be a substring starting at index 0 because that's our first index up to string length minus 2. Right, up to that one. We're going to start at index 0, and we're going to go up to index 3. We're going to start at index 0 and go up to index 2. Okay, that should be my last two. That should be my front end. And so at the point of return, I'm just going to combine those two things. Right, we got last 2 plus front end. Similar thing with the variables. One thing I will say, here and here is effectively duplicate code. Right? I would, in practice, not use these variables. I don't need them. I can just make the substrings here at the point of return. But because this gets used twice, that's actually a really good candidate for a variable. I would create an integer, let's call it index, and set it to be str.length -2. That's where I want to start with last two. That's where I want to stop with front end. So using that index, let's effectively recreate this. Right? For my last two, we're going to do a substring starting at index, this variable. For front end, I'm going to do a substring from index 0 up to index, that variable. So this creates the code and makes it look like this, right? The variable here is a little bit more useful than normal, than what we have been seeing, because it ultimately gets used in two different spots. I'm going to hit the go button. We'll see that we get this all correct. And we'll go on to the next one. The end. Given a string, return a string length 1 from its front unless front is false, in which case return a string length 1 from its back. The string will be non-empty. What's going on? If we take a look at our parameters, not only is this taken in a string, but it's taken in a Boolean. That's what it's talking about here when it says front, right? This Boolean is called front. We're going to take a string from the front if this is true. Otherwise, we'll get the string from the back if it is false, right? In the case of hello, true, we're getting the first character in H. In the case of hello, false, we're going to get the last character in O. So this little Boolean just adds an extra little bit of difficulty. For us, it just means we're going to need an if statement. If front is true, that is the case where we want to get the front character. Of note, it's just a single character, but what we're returning is a string. That could potentially be a problem, right? If I try to go into str and use char@, to get the first character, think for a moment. What data type does char@, return? It returns a char. That's not the same thing as a string. We need to use substring in this case. I want to get just a single character, and it's always going to be from the front. So notice there is no I involved here. So we're looking at 0 to 1. The difference of the parameters here is 1. So I'm getting a character, just the first character, starting at index 0. If we hit this else statement, what it means is that front is false. If that's the case, we're getting the back 1 character. Note that our string length can vary. Right here in this example, we got 5, but here in this example, we have 2. What that means is I'm going to use length. I'm going to use substring, and I'm going to reference length -1. If we just take a quick look, the length here is 5. Right? So if I use that example, we got 5 -1, index 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is index 4. I'm going to start here and go through the rest of the string. I'm using the overloaded version of substring because there's only one parameter here, the length -1. Right? In the case of O, that has a length of 2. So -1, index 1, this is 0, 1. We're going to start here and go through the rest of the string. By starting at just one spot back, but still going through the rest of the string, we're still only going to get 1 character. Let's try this out, and then we'll talk about how we can level this up. Okay, so for starters, because of the way that methods work, we don't need this else. I can just do this return statement. If this is true, we would enter the body, we would hit this return, and we would not only return that value, but we would leave the method. So even though there's 2 return statements in my method, only one of them will be executed. Because if this is true, we're going to return this and leave the method. If this is false, we would skip the body. This would not happen. And then we would instead hit this return statement. So I technically don't need the else in this context. And to prove it to you, I'll hit the go button again. You see we still get them all correct. Another way we can level up is front is ultimately a Boolean. I'm checking to see if it's true. So the true or false value that the if statement is using here is the one produced by this equals relational operator. You don't need to do that, right? We could actually just say if front, right? Keep in mind, it's a Boolean. It's going to be true or false. So we're saying if front is true, do this. If front is false, skip this and do this instead. I'm going to hit the go button to show you that this still works. And I don't think I can make this one any better. Well, based on what we know. Let's go to the next one. Given a string, return a version without both the first and last char of the string. The string may be any length, including 0. Interesting. Okay. I'm going to basically ignore this part where it says including 0. This is the first time they're giving us like length issues. I'm going to proceed as normal, and then we'll talk about how to fix the problems that's going to cause us. All right, taking a look at an example, we have hello coming in, and we want to get rid of the first and last character. Okay, keep in mind, we're not deleting anything. I can't change str. What I'm going to do is keep this section. Okay, so I'm just going to skip ahead quite a bit. We're going to do at the point of return. I'm going to do a substring of str. We're going to start at this index, index 1. And we're going to go all the way up to the last character, but not including the last character. So I'm going to do length -1. And keep in mind, this is inclusive, exclusive. This means that we're going to start at 1, inclusive, and we're going to go up to the last character, exclusive. Seems easy. I just take everything but the first 2 characters, right? We're pulling those out of our string, making a new string, and that's what's being returned. You see, I actually get it right here. This is why it's kind of important to check the test cases. When it's hello, we returned ELL, and that is correct. When it's ABC, we return just a B, and that's correct. When there's only 2 letters, 2 characters, we return nothing, and that's correct. When there's only 1 character, when our string has a length of 1, we end up going out of bounds. All right, simply put, the length of this is 1. This index is 0. So when I try to access index 1, that doesn't exist. I'm out of bounds. Okay, so we end up getting those wrong. It's a problem when our string length is 1. When it's 0, they end up telling us that it can be any length, including 0. Okay, how do we handle it? Well, in the event that it is a length of 1, we're supposed to return nothing. In the event that it's a length of 0, we're supposed to return nothing. So we could write special cases basically to handle when it's 1, when it's 0, but those are really the same case because the output is the same. You need to use an if statement to handle this. We need to check the length of the string. If our string length is less than or equal to 1, that means it's too short. Instead of doing this, I'm going to return something different. I'm going to return an empty string. That should make some sense to you, and you see that we are getting it correct. Of note, we could say that if it's less than 2, and that is the exact same thing, but this is as good as it gets. Let's do one more. Give it a string of even length. Return a string made of the middle 2 chars, so the string yields RI. String length will be at least 2. So in this case, we're only keeping the ones in the middle. They tell us it's even. You can see how maybe that matters if we're dividing by 2. But when we have string, we're supposed to return the middle 2, which is RI. When it's code, we're supposed to return the middle 2, which is OD. And as you can see, this is going to vary based on string length. It matters a lot. Ooh, ideas. Well, this one has a length of 6. I need to start at this index. That index is 0, 1, 2. So how do I go from a string length of 6 to 2? If I cut it in half, which we had a problem the other day where we like cut in half, all right, I take my 6, I divide by 2, I'm going to get 3. That's pretty close. What about with this one? I need this index, which is 1. This has a length of 4. I divide by 2, I'm going to get index 2. That's pretty close. It's, again, only 1 off. This has a length of, what, 8? I need this index, which is 3. If I take the 8 and I divide it by 2, that's going to give me 4, which is here. That's only 1 off. So you should see the pattern here, that if I cut it in half and then subtract 1, I'm going to get the starting index that I need. Okay, so I recommend pulling in that index variable that we saw just a couple of problems ago. I'm going to say integer index is equal to, let's take the length of the string. We divide that by 2, and then we subtract 1. Right? In my first example, we got a length of 6. We divide by 2, that gives us 3. Minus 1 is 2, which is this index. That's where I want to start. In this one, we have a length of 4. Divided by 2 is 2. Minus 1 is 1. That's this index. So we're getting our index. We need to pull a substring, and that substring is always a length of 2. Okay, why does that matter? I'm going to return str.substring. We're going to start at this index. Okay, we've done this a couple of times now, and I'm really harping on this idea that the resulting substring, the length of the resulting substring is the difference of the parameters. So I want to start here, and I need a substring that is a length of 2. I'm just going to go 2 more. I think this concept, the importance of this concept should be pretty apparent. I don't know exactly what index is, right? It varies with the strings. I do know that no matter what it is, this will have a length of 2. Why? Well, if index is some number, this is going to be that same number plus 2. The difference between these is mathematically an absolute value of 2. So whatever the substring is, it's going to have a length of 2. I didn't think too hard. All I did is I figured out where my index was. I knew to start there, and I knew I wanted to go 2 more. That's it, and that's where we're going to pause. I'll see you in the next one.